Good morning to all my friends and family, and welcome to this episode of Jim's 5am Club. I'm just going to go for a walk and talk today and add another video episode to the sub-series that I'm putting together as a tribute to the big man Tony Robbins, and the video is entitled All That I've Learned from Tony Robbins over the years. In case you were trying to figure out where I am, I'm up here at Nelson Bay, Port Stephens, and specifically I've just gone for a walk through the caravan park at Halifax Park, which brings us out onto Shoal Bay Beach. And as you can see, it is a perfect morning, simply magnificent, and we have the whole beach to ourselves. We've got the kookaburras singing in the background, and what I love about this beach here at this time of the morning is that we get to enjoy the morning sun, because this beach is easterly facing, and usually it's away from all the wind and the breeze. So I remember years ago, a friend of mine that I used to work with at OTC, Jeff Richardson, would tell me that whenever he's up here at Nelson Bay with his younger wife, he would always come to Shoal Bay for an early morning swim. And you get to learn the tricks over the years, but you need to learn from the locals, because the locals are the ones who are able to nuance things and get the best out of things. And he'd always say that the eastern end, or should I say the western end of Shoal Bay, is always the best first thing in the morning. So what I'd like to do is just to make a small video clip today, and today we're going to talk about change and how it's important to embrace change and to have the right mindset about change, because we live in a world of constant change where we are invited many times throughout our lives to make changes that could be an improvement or could make things worse for us. But at the end of the day, we shouldn't fear change. As we said, we are all constantly changing in one way or the other. One way for sure and for certain is that we're changing from an age perspective. We're getting older every day. We're also changing socially, because the Sydney, the Australia that I know today is a lot more different to the Australia that I grew up with, the Australia that the baby boomers know. And there are things which are better, and there are also a lot of things that we miss, things that will never ever probably come back, and our lives will always be lesser because of those changes that we've made that have not actually worked out to our benefit. But it's up to each person to assess the changes that they need to make in their lives, because sometimes when we're wedded, sometimes when we're welded and rusted on to a particular lifestyle or to a particular mindset, then in fact what we're doing is that we're wiring ourselves up for pain, I guess, is one way of looking at it. So what is good change, what is bad change. And the big man Anthony Robbins says that you need to assess change based on your calling, based on your values, based on your education, and where you want to see yourself go. And sometimes we'll need to swim with the current, and other times we'll be called to swim against the current. It all depends, as we're saying over the years, what changes come our way and whether or not those changes fit into the way we want to see ourselves and the way we want to live our lives. What I might do is go to the complete western end and go through the rocks here and just find myself a little private section of the beach to go for a swim and to continue my vlog. So the big man Anthony Robbins reminds us of the importance of having the right mentors, the right peers in our lives, the people who can help us calibrate and figure out what's right and what's wrong for us. Because at the end of the day, family and friends are great for support and nurture, but they're not going to be the people who are going to facilitate your ability to grow and develop. Because at the end of the day, the big man reminds us that family and friends, in fact, need us to be unchanging so that we can manage and keep a status quo, a particular hierarchy within a family. So we've got that working with us in one way, because we do need certainty in our lives, but by the same token we also need a level and a dose of uncertainty in order to grow and develop, and a dose of uncertainty in terms of drive to get us to where we want to be and to fill the many gaps that we have potentially in our circle of life, our life map. Because the big man reminds us that it's imperative and it's important, where possible, to be a gap filler, to be able to see where you currently are and to identify whether or not, and to assess whether or not that's where you want to be, and to do whatever you have to do in order to make the most of the situation that you currently find yourself in. I just dropped my towel over here. We'll just go over here to the rocks and continue talking. So over history, we have lots of examples of great leaders who have had wonderful mentors, people who have been able to push them, to pull them, to bend them, to stretch them, to cajole them, to get them to do the things that they wouldn't normally do without the coach, without the mentor, without their teacher pushing them to do it. For those of us who have done martial arts, you know that in order to learn, to grow, develop, and to become a master yourself, you do need to have a good teacher. A teacher who's going to bend and stretch you, who's going to push you and to make your life difficult, because it's through those difficulties that we're actually growing, expanding, learning and getting better. So similarly, many great leaders of the past have had great leaders that they've been able to follow and learn from. An example that I'll use is Alexander the Great. He came from a great family. He had a father who was a king, who was a great leader. So he had a benchmark, a baseline that he could assess and compare himself to, and identify the gaps that he had in his abilities and in his life. And he went on to be one of the greatest leaders, one of the greatest military leaders that the world has ever seen. And by the age of 33, had conquered the known world, had conquered the world as it was known, which is a significant and a very special sort of outcome, and something which historically has given him the title of Alexander the Great because of his achievements. But what a lot of people are not aware of is that Alexander the Great became great because of the things that he did and because of the mindset he had and the followers and support that he received. So from a very young age, Alexander the Great had a great mentor himself. He had Aristotle, the Greek philosopher, the great Greek philosopher, who would shape his ability to think, would give him perspective, would help him deliver powerful oratory experiences to his team, to his soldiers, to his captors, and help him within a very, very short period of time become an awesome, wonderful leader. So Aristotle was one of the three great philosophers, one of the three great Greek philosophers of ancient times. I think it goes Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle was the third of that school of philosophy. And I remember Aristotle saying something quite profound, and he said that dogs only bark at things that they don't understand. So if we take time to learn, if we take time to compare and contrast, what Aristotle is suggesting, that you'll be less alarmed and less fearful of the world. But it works in both ways. You know, on the one hand, we'll bark at things, or dogs will bark at things they don't understand. But by the same token, if you understand too much, then that also leads to an expression of fear, because you start to generate your own irrational fears, or the fears that are taught to you, that you absorb and that you inherit from the third parties that you learn from. I'll just check to see that my thongs are still up here. I can see one there. Let me just check that the other one's there as well. Don't want to lose my thongs. Yep, they're both here, so that's all good. So Tony Robbins reminds us of the importance and the key to having a good coach, or a good set of coaches. And he gives us examples of Tiger Woods, who had 4 coaches working with him and on him at the same time. He changed his swing. He radically changed his swing, even though he had a great swing. For some reason or other, he decided to re-engineer, recalibrate his swing to give him more power, more accuracy, more consistency. And he had 4 coaches working with him at the same time. And as we said, his family and friends would have advised him that everything is okay, he's got a great swing, he's doing really, really well. But Tiger Woods wanted something more. He wanted to be the very, very best that the world has ever seen. And he therefore paid for, engaged team of coaches that would help him re-engineer his swing. And initially his swing, the re-engineered swing, wasn't working. But then one day it all came together and he had one of the greatest swings in golf. But it all comes about by having people who have experience, by having people who have worked with other people who have similar sort of challenges, who understand what makes you tick, who understand what makes other people tick, and to use that, as we say, to gain advantage, to give you an opportunity to grow, develop, and to make the necessary changes that are going to significantly influence your performance, whatever that performance may be that you're trying to encourage and to bring out. And having an honest relationship with a mentor, with a peer, is paramount, because it's going to be tough to change. It's going to be tough to do the things that you need to do to be the person, to turn into the person that you need to be. And for that reason, we need to give permission to certain people, but not all people in our lives, to be able to do the things to us in order to force us to make the necessary changes to enable us to grow. And that's why at the Anthony Robbins seminars, the participants are asked by Anthony Robbins to go all in, to not dabble, to use this opportunity as an opportunity to grow, develop, and make the necessary changes that are going to facilitate the step function, the step up that they need in order to achieve the wonderful growth opportunities, rewards, and satisfaction that comes through growing and developing. So, whilst a lot of people want to go alone, want to do it themselves, the reality is you can't really do it by yourself. You actually need help, and you need help from a peer group that are going to be honest with you, are going to cajole you, encourage you, and push you and pull you in ways that you didn't think possible, but you're going to have to submit to their authority for a certain amount of time until you can see the results. And of course, if you're not seeing the results that you desire, then to look elsewhere or to look for other coaches, because there's a certain chemistry, there's a certain trust, there's a certain element of love and respect that one needs in order to bring out the best in somebody else. And unless somebody truly trusts you and feels your love and feels your respect, then they're not going to, I guess, respond to you in the way which is going to be as productive as what it could be. So the other thing that Anthony Robbins talks about here, which is really, really interesting and powerful as well, is that change is important, change is inevitable, but we need to change in an empowering and in a productive way. If you've got people around you who are asking you to change your values, change the things you say and how you think, then by fitting in, you're not necessarily growing and developing and becoming better. Anthony Robbins gives an example that we shouldn't change just in order to fit in with other people if it goes contrary to your values and core beliefs. If you're living a life which is a lie by trying just to fit in with other people, then it's not going to be all that sustainable, is the bottom line and the key message. He uses the example of Michael Jordan. Whenever Michael Jordan walks into the room, or any room, he doesn't change the way he is to fit in. He just is who he is, and amazingly, magically, the room changes to adjust to him. Easier said than done, of course, but we need to be men of our words, and it's not good to be a dabbler. It's not good to be a patsy, and it's not good just to change to appease other people all the time. Admittedly, you may have to do it every now and then just to keep the peace and to stay in love. But ideally, what we all want in our lives is to be able to live with passion, to live freely, and to freely express who we are. Because at the end of the day, Anthony Robbins reminds us that we are worthy. We are all God's creation. We are one with God and one with God's creation. So each of us are designed, each of us are created different from each other. And that design is purposeful. The reason why we're designed differently and made different from each other is so that we can become and be different for each other, so that we can use our energy, so that we can use our skills, so we can use our network, our money, and all the gifts that God has given us, to not only use that to worship God and to thank God and to glorify God through our example and through our works, but to love our neighbour as we love ourselves, so that we are co-partners, we are co-operators with God, so that we can all benefit from each other's works and others' contributions as best we can. Of course, we're all going to be at different paths of our growth and development. We're going to be in different seasons, in different phases, in different chapters of our lives. And we're not all going to be wanting the same thing at the same time. But this is where it becomes a dance. This is where it becomes like the ocean, where the waves come in, go out, the tide ebbs and rises in order to work together so that we can all benefit and we can all experience the love of God, and to make the most of our time on this planet and to be who we're meant to be able to express our significant and our particular creation, because we all have a different calling, is what I'm trying to get at. That calling is different. My calling is different to yours. My calling now is probably different to the calling that I had when I was in my 30s. We keep needing to grow and develop and to assess and reassess and to change where necessary. As we're saying, we don't have to change just to fit in. What we have to do is to change to deliver on our promise to ourselves and deliver on the promise that God has given to us through his will. And we need to test God's will in a positive way, in a loving way, to see if we're on track or off track, and to know that each and every person has their own fate. And just because it didn't work for me today doesn't mean it's not going to work for me tomorrow. It may not be God's will for it to work for me today. It may not be God's will for it to work for me forever in particular aspect of my life. But I need to keep on changing my approach, keep on testing God's will. And once I get to a point and I realise that it's not God's will for me to have something or to achieve something or to do something, then to humbly and lovingly accept God's will, knowing that if I did get to achieve it and it wasn't God's will, then the outcome, the long-term outcome, may not be sustainable, productive, and of eternal value to my soul and to the people that I have near and dear to my life. So I think I'll leave it there. So thank you very much for joining me on this episode of Jim's 5am Club. what I'm going to do now is I'm going to finish off this vlog, and I'm going to go for a swim just here. How beautiful it is. I'm just going to enter the water and just enjoy this early morning dip in this fresh, clean, pristine environment. Yasa, take care, and wishing you all the best. Bye for now from Jim on Jim's 5am.